Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you for taking time to be with us today. As a technology and analytics professional who has been in this industry for 20 plus years, today is arguably one of the most exciting times we are living in, right? Large language models are becoming more and more powerful, and agentic AI is promising to take that power and disrupt the way we live our lives, the way we do work, and the way businesses operate. And yet, when we look at the adoption of agentic AI and LLMs at an enterprise level, we see very few proof of concepts are actually scaling into enterprise adoption. And more so, very few initiatives, less than 20, 25%, are actually delivering the expected ROI. Why is that? Is it because of the power of the technology? We believe it's about how we are approaching it. Agentic AI and LLMs are very powerful, but we find there are few reasons why people are still not getting the full value out of them, right? First is siloed implementation. Today, people are deploying these agents in silos for specific tasks without connecting them with the overall function and departmental goals and enterprise strategy. Second, we feel there's a lack of deep process understanding, and because of which, though these agents are taking actions, they are not fitting in the real-world workflows, right? And both of these combined leads to what we call as context blindness. Your AI systems and solutions are as good as the context you feed them. And today, a lot of these solutions do not get and capture the proprietary institutional knowledge, the know-how, and the processes, written and unwritten, both. And last but not the least, there is an integration gap. A lot of companies and enterprises are not thinking proactively as to how they're going to integrate these solutions with other enterprise systems like ERP, CMS, or CRM. And without that, what you get is isolated actions without outcomes, right? So how do we move and shift from this siloed, standalone world to a more seamless and context-driven workflows? When we started thinking about this problem, right, we said, OK, let's first map how people are developing solutions today and what's a framework which we can look at. So we came up with this framework. On the y-axis is the process, the purpose, or the strategic intent with which you are building your solution, right? Now, this could be a faster product launch, or this could be better ROI from your marketing initiatives. And on the x-axis is the context and the integrations you need to feed into your system to achieve that purpose and goal, right? So if you look at this, on the leftmost is what we call as task-specific AI. You are using AI to write a piece of code. You are using AI to summarize a document. Now, these does not require much context, right? The LLMs are powerful enough to do this. But the impact is also just an individual productivity, right? Then organizations are moving to what we call as use case specific AI, where you define a particular use case. In this case, it could be campaign measurement, right? So you need to provide a little bit more context. What's the definition of your campaign measurement? What data you need to access? What is the process you follow, right? And the impact is slightly more, because you are able to potentially take faster and better decisions. Then things start becoming more interesting when you start modeling personas. You take a marketeer, for example, or you take a sales rep, and you say, OK, what is a day in the life of a marketeer? What decisions do they need to take? What actions do they need to take, right? And then you model your AI solutions around that. And hence, you have to obviously provide more context to them, but there's also a bigger impact which they can bring to the organization. Now, things start getting more interesting because eventually these personas are interacting with other personas in context of certain workflows and processes, right? This is where a lot of organizations struggle, what we call as workflow-specific AI. How do you understand the nitty-gritties of the process? How do you bring all of that context and say, persona A is going to interact with persona B, and how do I replicate that in my AI solution? And last, what we are defining as systemic AI. This is where you start thinking at a function or a department level, at a system level, and you say, my goal is to increase marketing ROI from my digital channels by, say, 25%. How do I define an AI system which will act on this? It's obviously a combination of various workflows, personas, personal use cases, and tasks, but they need to come together in the context of a system. And that is when you start moving and shifting from what we call AI, which is focused on actions, to AI, which is focused on outcomes. So how do we think about it, right? And that's where we introduce this holistic framework, which we call systemic AI. For us, it is about utilizing AI in the context of existing decision-making systems with reimagined processes and AI agents infused with purpose and context to deliver the impact, right? So that's how we think about systemic AI. There are certain key principles on which we have designed this framework and approach, right? The first is you need to start thinking functions first, systems first. That has to be your approach when you go into designing such systems, right? Second is you have to start thinking AI native process design. If today you are doing A, B, C, it's not just about making A better, B better, and C better. Maybe you don't need the step B, or maybe it's A, D, and C now, right? So how do you start thinking in an AI native manner? Third, how do you ensure cross-functional collaboration and orchestration? Those things have to be built into the design of your system and not as an afterthought. Fourth, very important, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is dynamic context and learning. Like we spoke about, context is the king. Unless you provide the right context to these systems, they will not give you the right actions. But at the same time, the context is dynamic. Workflows in your organization are changing all the time. Market dynamics are changing. Government regulations are changing. All those things have to be brought into the system in a dynamic manner. Fourth or fifth, like we discussed, you need deep integrations with your existing systems, and you have to think about it upfront in your design process. And last but not the least, as you are implementing these systems at an enterprise level, you have to start thinking of governance. Without the right governance, these systems will not scale, and they will fail at some point of time. OK, so how do you go about building this, right? So the way we look at it, there are 4 core building blocks of any large-scale enterprise system. The first is what we call the value layer. This is where you are building the use cases, the applications, the interfaces, which are actually interacting with the intelligence and are being integrated with your decision flow to get to a specific outcome, right? Now, this layer is what taps into what we call as the core layer. This is your core intelligence layer. This is where your orchestrators, your models, and your agents are sitting. This is what is producing the intelligence which is interacting with the value layer, right? And at the bottom, and in fact, I would say the bedrock of all of this is the foundational layer of context and data. This is where the orchestrators are actually understanding what to do, how to be seamless, how to go from one action to the next action, right? How to link all of these things. So this is that's why we call it the foundational layer. And governing all of these 3 layers is the strategy and governance. The key thing here is you have to think of governance at each building block separately, because there is a separate purpose for it, right? So if you are in the value layer, your purpose is to align your AI investments with your organization strategy, to define the right use cases, to define the right ROI, to create the right processes and policies around how AI will be adopted in your organization. If you are thinking of governance at the core layer, you have to start thinking, how do I standardize agent behaviors? Because if agents are going to run your enterprise, they better follow some norms, right? So how do you ensure that you have a compliant decision-making process or a layer? And at the foundation layer, it's very important to ensure data and context integrity as well as trustworthiness. Otherwise, nobody will trust your system. So the kind of governance models you need at the foundation layer are very different, right? So let's make this a little bit more real. with a reference architecture diagram, right? This is how we see typically a large organization should build their systemic AI, right? On the top is the value layer, where your leadership, your managers, basically your users, are interacting with the system. Now, these interactions could be through chatbots, through dashboards, through applications, right? Typically, when you ask a question, the first thing any system does it goes to what we call the brain of the system, which is the orchestrator. This is the layer which actually decodes and understands your query. It first goes to the context layer to say, hey, do I have enough context? Can I actually answer this question, right? And that's where the context layer becomes very important. So once the context layer gives enough information to the orchestrator, it starts invoking other agents. And that's what we typically call the agent-to-agent protocols, right? Now, these agents could be very simple agents, like a document query agent or a SQL to text agent. Or they could be more complicated agents. You could actually create a pricing agent, which understands how to simulate prices for your organization, right? It depends on the level of sophistication you want to bring in these agents. And in turn, these agents are actually sitting on these LLM models, which today, to be very honest, is the most commoditized entity of this entire architecture. Everybody has access to these models. They are open source. You can buy them. It is the same for everyone. What makes this whole system real for you is three things, right? First is how are you defining the interface and how are you reimagining your processes? Second, how are you building the orchestrator? Because that's the brain of your system, right? And third, the context layer. This is what makes AI yours and different from any other organization. And it helps you take actions in your context. OK, so now the question comes for most of the people when they start executing is there are a plethora of technologies available out there. How do I go about deciding what to buy, what to build, right? So to make it slightly easier, we have created a framework where we have clubbed these technologies into three levels, right? The bottommost is what we call individual productivity and research-oriented technologies, your ChatGPTs, your Perplexity, cloud of the world, right? They are focused on individual tasks, like we spoke about earlier. They are good to buy from outside. There are many of them available. You don't need to build them in-house, right? The second is where the complexity starts increasing is what we call function-specific tasks. Things like, hey, I want to create a campaign. I want to do a task in my HR system. Now, what you will see, a lot of the existing ERP players like Salesforce, Workday, they are coming up with their own agentic solutions because they understand these tasks pretty well, right? They are very standard defined tasks. What becomes tricky or interesting is a lot of organizations have custom tasks today, which are not built into any of these ERP systems, right? And that's where you need custom AI solutions to address those tasks. And the last layer on the top is the most complex, where you have so many workflows, so many things which are happening at a strategy level, at an orchestration level, where these tasks have to interact with each other, like we spoke, at a system level. And that's what we call the workflow and complex task. And this is where you have platforms. You have Palantir. You have C3 AI, right? They play, because you have to create a whole AI system. Now, as MathCo, you would see our logo on the top and the middle layer. We work with companies as their AI program partner. A, we have our own platform, which is very flexible to bring in all of these technologies into the platform. And B, we believe you need to think of it as a program and not as an individual solution, right? So let's talk a little bit. I'll give you a preview today of our own platform, which we call NucleOS. We have been working on NucleOS for the last 5 to 6 years. And today, I'm very proud to say it's an AI-native platform which can execute to the vision of systemic AI. As you enter NucleOS, what you'll see the first thing on the left-hand side is your own custom screen, where you can actually prepare this as you would like to access it. You have access to an app store, which today has more than 2,000 applications, which have been built by us and our customers over the last 5 years. These are applications catered towards specific business problems, where AI is infused into these applications. You have access to your own AI assistants, where you can ask business questions, you can summarize documents, or you can just automate certain tasks, right? Now, the more interesting part of this platform is in the guts of the platform. So let me dive into that for a second. This is how the platform is broken or designed. It's built on 3 studios. These studios align very well with the vision or the building blocks I just spoke about. On the left hand, what you see is the data studio. This is where you can build your data models. You can run data quality controls. You even can build your own data marketplace, where you can use AI assistants to search any data which is available in your organization. All these features are AI native built into the platform. In the middle is what we call the AI studio, where from the bottom to the top, very interesting, we have built a feature called Context Store, where you can build your own organization's context in one place. And this connects with Databricks, AWS, Snowflake, whatever you might have your data in. So you can bring all of that data in one place as a context to feed into your AI solutions. And then you have an ability to connect various LLMs. There's an agent marketplace where we have many pre-built and verified agents. And then what you see on the rightmost is the Decision Studio. I think I still have 5 minutes. OK. What you see on the rightmost is the Decision Studio. This is where you actually build applications which drive business values. You can build your AI assistant, application, business processes. Let me take one example to make it very real, because very few organizations, we believe, are infusing AI into business processes. So I'm going to take an example of a business process rather than just an assistant. So if you click here, what you will see is these are all the business processes in the CPG industry where we have created custom applications. And what I'll do is I'll go into the last one, which is revenue growth management. Once I go here, as a leader of the revenue growth management function with the CPG industry, you will land on this page. What you see on the top left here is an initiative, which is win through shopper engagement. What you see here are the key KPIs which you need to drive as a head of the RGM group, right? Now, the interesting thing is these KPIs have been pulled by AI agents from strategy documents which were uploaded into the context store. And you can plug and play and change these KPIs on the fly, right? Then on the right-hand side, what you will see is insights generated by AI agents in the context of those KPIs. We are not telling anything what insight to write. The agents are understanding what are the key KPIs we want to track, and they are generating insights on their own. And then, very interestingly, on the left-hand side here, what you see as drivers, these are teams who are working under the whole RGM umbrella, right? The pricing team, promotions team, distribution. And they are taking individual actions which are connected to each other. So if I click on pricing here, what I'll be able to see as the owner of the pricing function is all the key tasks I need to achieve in my day-to-day life, right? Let's go in one of the tasks, say a quarterly price review. Once you click this, the entire decision flow of what you as the owner of that pricing function needs to do is mapped out here. You can create your own custom decision flows. This is just a standard decision flow for a pricing executive. And interestingly, what you will see here is what steps are done and what do you need to do next. So in this case, you will see that you need to simulate prices as the next thing, as the owner of this function. So you can go into particular task. You can click on the right-hand top. And what you will see is all the options available to you to complete this task. Now, this has a thing called refer solutions, because what we believe is Nucleus is a platform to integrate and not just build within. So when you click on this refer solutions here, what the platform does it will bring up all the solutions which are available within Nucleus, which we have built for this client, as well as solutions available in other apps, like you can see Salesforce here. And you can go into any of these apps from this single platform and execute these actions. Now, you would say, where is Gen AI in this? So you can always decide with a co-pilot. So what we have also done here is we have built a Copilot application which sits on the top of all of these solutions. So you don't even need to go into any of these solutions. You can just ask a question. Simulate prices for a certain SKU, certain time period, and the GenAI agent will run its query. It will give you all the parameters it believes you need to run. You can actually change these parameters if you want, and you can just run simulate, and you will get all the expected sales and the scenarios, right? So once you have done with this task, you can go back to this screen. You can audit all the simulations you have done. And when you go to the rollout part of it, it integrates directly into other systems where all of these prices are updated. So this is just one example. Like pricing, we have a similar decision flow for promotions, assortment, and all of those actions, right? But the idea of showing this was, this is our vision of how you can infuse AI into day-to-day decision making and business processes, and not build AI in isolation outside. So with that, I'll just wrap up with a few key takeaways from this session, right? First is start thinking at a system level. That's where your thinking should start, right? Design with a user and function-centric mindset and reimagine your processes. Don't go by just automating the same processes which you have today. Third, context is king. Without context, none of this is yours. It's just a generic AI. It will not give you the ROI you are looking for. Fourth, think of governance as a foundational thing. You cannot scale it at an enterprise level without thinking governance. And last, start fast and build in a modular fashion. You don't have to build everything today. You just have to design and think at a system level. With that, I'll wrap up. This is a QR code where you can actually download a detailed white paper on systemic AI. And you can also request a workshop where we can go into the details of nucleus and other dimensions. Thank you.